want to introduce some people. There's some people here also in the auditorium that we could not all fit onto the stage. But I would like to welcome Pastor Martin from Kenya. Where are you? Wave at us, Pastor Martin. There he is. And Pastor Opa Rampa from Botswana. Where are you? Pastor Benjamin from Botswana as well. And Pastor John Pierre and John Paul. Where are Pastor John Paul, John Pierre and John Paul? There at the back. And Pastor Charles from the DRC. Where is Pastor Charles? Somewhere. Did I miss anybody? No. Then I would like to introduce you to Pastor Henry from Malawi. Pastor Aaron from Israel. Bishop Magulu from Tanzania. Okay, wonderful. We're going to have a bit of a discussion, and after that, some questions and answer session. And we're going to start with our friend from Israel, who is a Jewish believer, just to share a little bit of his testimony with us, how he came to know the Lord, and especially his moving back to Israel.
Yeah, I was not born in Israel. I was born in New Zealand. And my ancestors came from Lithuania. My great-great-grandfather was the chief rabbi there. They moved to Belarusia, Minsk, from there to England, and then to New Zealand. And both my parents are from the tribe of Levi. My last name is Levako. My mother's maiden name is Levi. And we grew up in a very traditional, cultural Jewish family. Not really religious, but it's very, very traditional. We kept all the Jewish festivals and took school off and went to the high holidays to the synagogues. And I went to Hebrew school. When I was 13, I had what's called a bar mitzvah, where it's like a coming of age. And then after that, I kind of went my own way. Big turning point in my life when I was 16. I was in a car accident with my best friend, and he was killed. And that began a search in my life for deeper meaning in life and questions about death and life. When I was 19 years old, a Christian man, he was a real evangelist, made a kind of a beeline toward me. And in about 3 weeks, he just shared the gospel. And, sometimes I actually teach about how to evangelize Jews, the ABCDs. Well, this guy broke every law, and he just laid it on that you're a sinner, you're separated from God, you need forgiveness. And I understood that as a Jew, the whole concept of sacrifice. But the problem is I was like a bit of an agnostic. I wasn't sure whether there really was a God or not. And one day as he was talking to me, he was talking about God's covenants and how God is faithful to his covenants. And as he was talking, we saw this beautiful rainbow in the sky. And I looked, and it made a big impact in my life. And that was I think was the first time that I really believed there was a God. And I began to read the Bible as if it really was inspired by God. And in a very short time, I was just convinced that the whole plan of salvation, there is a God. Because of sin, we're separated. We need a Savior. And that Jesus fulfilled all the Old Testament prophecies. So that's the short story. The other side, the flip side, is my big fear was, what are my family going to say? Because I grew up in a family that were very, very against Christians, because they viewed Christians as enemies of the Jewish people. And if you know a bit of history of Christianity, you'll understand why. So it was very difficult for me to pluck up the courage to tell them. But the day came, and it was like the worst thing I could have done. My mother even said if you'd got into drugs and gone to prison, it wouldn't have been so bad. But Jesus, and they cut me off. So it was costly, but on the other hand, it was actually very much needed for me to break away from very uh, some very unhealthy soul ties there. So it wasn't just the Jesus issue. There were some dysfunctional things going on. And then I went north, and since then, I've never had a problem for the rest of my life. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Pastor Henry has been a friend of ours for 8 years. Is it 7, 8 years that we've been going to Malawi, Mangochi specifically, and he reaches out specifically to the Muslim communities in Malawi. He's planted many churches, so he's got the same heart as us. But he's got a very specific story that I would like to ask him to share with us um, about hearing God's audible voice. Will you please share that with us today?
Thank you, Pastor Sias. Actually, it was 1990 when God gave me an assignment of fasting. It was a long fasting in my life. And as I was fasting, then I was searching the scriptures. You see, my background, I'm a Catholic. So having born again, I needed to know much from the Bible because as a Catholic in those days, I don't know now, in those days, people are not permitted to read the Bible. So I was too hungry for the word. So as I was fasting, I was searching the words. Then the other day I said to God, Lord, I read in the Bible, you have been speaking to your people in audible voice. At that time, God was able to speak to me in dreams, in visions, in my spirit, by through conviction. But this was the thing that was remaining to my side. You see, I've got a problem. In whatever I read in the Bible, I want it to happen to me. So I said, Lord, I persisted so much. I said, Lord, I would like if you could speak to me audibly. Then I finished my fast. It took almost 3 years down the line. God didn't speak to me, so I forgot about it. In 1993, then the other day, during dawn hours, I heard the ring of a landline phone. But actually, the tone was different from the actual landline phone. Why I call it was different because in Malawi, I don't know, in Malawi, the landline would go grr, 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 grr. But this one, this special day, it went grrr. So I was disturbed in my sleep. Then I saw a light that is almost during the light of the sun, more than that, coming through the door into my room. Then that disturbed me also. I had to wake up. Because it was for the first time to experience such a thing. Then I heard my name be called Henry, Henry, Henry 3 times. So I said, here I am, Lord. You may ask, how did you know that it's the Lord? The question is easy. When the Lord speaks, you automatically know that's the voice of the Lord. So I said, here I am, Lord. Then the Lord said, the problem that we have been praying for is over today. Then the Lord left. The light went out. Guess what now? In the morning, I wanted to wake up just to come out of my bed. My bed was not a long one, it was a short one. I couldn't manage. I was paralyzed. To some of you have gone through an operation or an injection that they want to an operation, it weakens you. It was more than that. I was too weak. I couldn't come out of my bed. I was very weak. Then when my maid wanted to know what's wrong with me, I was saying, I'm here, don't worry. She brought tea. The moment I take a sip of that tea, I was backslid into the spirit. It took me almost 3 days. The third day I managed to go to the lounge. Then come somebody, a lady I wanted to pray for. I prayed for her. She went down. So she insisted to stand to go back home. I said, don't leave. The Lord is not yet through with you. She insisted. When she left and went home, she remained in her bedroom for 3 days. She couldn't wake up. So in short, that's how I heard God speaking to me audibly. But guys, let me say to you, don't do what I did. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to hear the Lord audibly. Then I said, Lord, thank you very much that you have spoken to me audibly, but never again speak to me.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Pastor Henry, how many children have you got and your wife? Tell us a little bit about your family.
I'm blessed with 6 children. The first one is a girl, second one a boy, third one a girl, fourth one a boy, fifth one a girl, sixth a boy. My wife's name is Louise. Not Louise, that one, but the black Louise.
Bishop Magulu, tell us a little bit about how you came to know the Lord and especially in what countries you are involved in sharing the gospel and church planting at the moment.
First of all, I want to take this opportunity to thank you so much, the Shofar Church, to extend their their invitation to come here and be part of the conference. You have been feeding us so very nicely.
Let me just interrupt. These pastors, they've finished a sheep in the first 3 days. Let's give them a round of applause.
So, actually, I started my ministry in 1984, and that was when I finished my study as a civil engineer. It was very hard for me to go to do civil works. So I decided to go to Bible college, and the family was positively, but my dad, my family was not positively. Only my daddy was positive to me. But I made a hard decision to go to full-time ministry. So since 1984 up to 1990, around 1990, I was going all over Tanzania doing crusades and seminars, different churches, interdenomination ministry. But in one time, I can say a certain time, my ministry was not doing very well. The people whom we started together, they decided to kick me out of the ministry. So that was turning point. It was very hard for me. So I know how to be lonely. It was really hard, but I stayed for almost 2 or 3 years praying with my family and so on. So in 1995, that's where I started my church, Christian Mission Fellowship Church. It's a local church. I didn't want to be a pastor, and I hated to be a pastor. But really, God was speaking hardly to me. I surrendered myself. I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to do what you want me to do. But I liked to be an evangelist going all over Tanzania, doing training and outside Tanzania. But in 1995, I started a single congregation, and it was not easy in Dar es Salaam, but we managed it. And slowly, I start planting churches in Dar es Salaam and all over Tanzania. For right now, we have about 150 churches all over Tanzania. And beside that, we are penetrating in neighboring countries. We have churches in Mozambique, we have churches in Zambia, we have churches in Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, and this year we are going to plant a church in Sudan, Sudan. So I'm going to organize a team from Uganda, team from Kenya, and Tanzania. All of us, we are going to form a joint venture team. We are going to South Sudan to plant a church. In spite of that, also we are penetrating Zanzibar. You know, Tanganyika, formerly Tanzania was called Tanganyika. We are highly affected by slave trade. Especially Zanzibar was a slave market, if you remember, in East Africa. So it has been very difficult to penetrate. All the coastal region is Islamic state, from Tanga up to Mtwara and Zanzibar. So Zanzibar is 99% Muslims. But we thank you, God has given me a favor. We are penetrating in Zanzibar right now. Right now, in Zanzibar, we have more than 6 churches, and also other churches are doing training and encouraging the pastors. Not only my pastor, I'm really I'm very involved in mobilizing the body of Christ. So I'm not looking of my denomination. I'm looking the body of Tanzania. Right now in Zanzibar, we have, when I was doing research, it was about just 30 churches, but now the number is increasing. Maybe it's going to 50 churches in Zanzibar Island. In Pemba, we are trying our level best. Pemba is just a sister island to Zanzibar, but we are trying our level best, and there is also some churches in Pemba. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bishop. I'm sure there's some of us that would love to go to Zanzibar for a mission trip.
You know, Pastor, you cannot separate mission and tourism.
So if you go on holiday to one of these nations, we must have a mission work in there, no just holidays. Thank you for that. Aaron, we are in the news. There are so many things going on in Israel at the moment. I think we're on a knife edge. Can you maybe give us a little bit just of a picture of what is going on the ground level in Israel at the moment?
Well, there is real uncertainty what's going on. The peace talks have broken down. Our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who spoke at the United Nations a few days ago, laid out his ideas. He's willing to give up 95% of the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. The Palestinian people or the leadership are kind of split, with the political wing, Fatah, who are reneging or at least not willing to go forward. And then you've got the military wing of the Palestinian Authority called the Hamas. They really are not interested in negotiations at all. So the peace talks have broken down. Of course, we've seen the Palestinian Authority have gone outside of the 93 Oslo peace talks. They've broken those agreements by going to the United Nations, asking for full membership within the United Nations. We'll find out what the outcome's going to be. In case you didn't know, the South African government voted in favor for that. The feeling on the ground is, on the Jewish side, you know, if you took 10 Jews, you'd probably get 10 different opinions and 20 decisions. But yeah, there's a sense of almost, on one hand, doom, that the peace talks are going nowhere, and therefore it looks like there's going to be troubles, war. On the other hand, there are the left-wingers who are always optimistic, always pushing that, you know, there is going to be some kind of agreement. Then there are some right-wingers who are standing and saying, if our government are going to offer to pull us out of Judea and Samaria. By the way, there's about 300,000 Jewish people living in Judea and Samaria. And when they look back about 6 years ago with what happened when we pulled 7,000 people out of Gaza, it was very traumatic. there's a feeling of a potential civil war. Then there are the Orthodox Jews who believe, along with us Messianic Jews, which are about 15,000, we're in what's commonly called a kind of a Messianic age, which believes that we're coming into the end days. And as the Jewish people are returning home, this is a preparation for the rebuilding of the temple and the coming of the Messiah. So there's different feeling across the spectrum. I can't really speak too much for the Palestinian people, what they're feeling. A lot of them are feeling optimistic now that they are going to get a national Jewish homeland and a national identity, a state. That's the feeling there. So yeah, a bit of mixture between optimism, hope, fear of outbreak of war. Myself personally, I'm very concerned with what's happening. Our neighbors aren't too friendly. Well, except of course to our east, Jordan. We have some good friendly neighbors. Just lastly, we have big problems in the south with Egypt. Our 30-year peace with Egypt is very much under threat. In the north, we have Syria and Lebanon who are piling up mass amount of weapons of destruction, as well as on our southwestern border in Gaza Strip. And of course, in the northeast, we have the very real threat of Iran, who are trying to build nuclear capacity. So it's there's tension, there's uncertainty, to say the least.
Maybe just to follow on a bit more tricky question, the Christian Palestinians and the Jewish Christians, do they get along in Israel? Is there any talks between them, or how would you say is the situation at the moment there?
Yeah, I was here yesterday, and was it yesterday? I can't remember. Yeah, and I talked a little bit about that, how we Messianic Jews who are about 15,000 and the Palestinian Christians, and the Palestinian Christians consist of Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Syrian, Latin, as well as Catholic. And out of the maybe 500,000 Christian Palestinians, you maybe have, I don't know, 10% who we'd call evangelical. And they are the ones that we really dialogue with. And out of that number, one of the big problems with our dialogue is a theological issue, and that is regarding the land. Because even these Palestinian, not all of them, but even these Palestinian Christians, they want a Palestinian state. In other words, they want to overthrow our state. So there's tensions. And they want to fight for a national identity. And we Messianic Jews also can be a little bit guilty as well, where we say, well, you know, this is our land. Not only did the United Nations vote for it in 1948, but look here in the Bible, it says that this is our land. So we also can become very nationalistic. And there are organizations who are working at bringing reconciliation between the two of us. And some of the ways we're doing that is, yeah, we're going into the desert, we're forgetting the issues of the land, we're just talking about the good Christian virtues of love, forgiveness, getting along. And it's not so successful, but people are working at it. It's going to take time. But there are some, you know, I have some precious Arab brothers and sisters who we go over to their house, they come over to our house, and I work with a number of them. I'm a tour guide, and a lot of the bus drivers that I work with are Arab Christian bus drivers, and we get on really well. So there's a long way to go, but there's some good programs at work.
Thank you for that. Pastor Henry, can you maybe share, just to get back to a bit of a testimony, the greatest miracle that God has done that you have seen, maybe physically, maybe spiritually? Would you like to share with us something in your ministry that would encourage us.
Thank you. Well, to me, when I consider miracles, the first of its kind, which is the biggest, is salvation of human being. And when I minister or when I preach a gospel, and if not even a single life comes to the Lord, I have a sleepless night. Because why I have a sleepless night? Because I say, I haven't finished my job. But I'm very thankful that most of the time I've seen lives coming to the Lord. I can't count because it's the Lord who has the diary book or the register book. Now, other miracles now, those are second options. It's healings, emotional healings, physical healings. Those ones also are plenty, but I can only give 2 or 3 that I remember very well. 1987, at a meeting, I prayed for somebody who could not see in his life, and the Lord transformed his eyes. He was able to see. Then in 1993, I was ministering to a Muslim family. Then the wife could not see in her life. But that day, the Lord gave her the grace that she was able to see, and up to now, she's seeing. In 2004, I was preaching in Kubela, that is Robertson. Robertson, there is a township for the blacks. It's called in Kubela. As I was preaching, somebody was coming to me in crutches. That person could not walk without crutches. So I turned that person back. I said, I'm preaching. This is not the time for praying for the sick. The moment he turned away, going the opposite direction, he lost his crutches. He received his healing. That was the day I was humbled so much. And I knew healing does not come from man. It only comes from God. That person had faith more than my faith. That's why I received his healing. So that's all I can say.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.